Hi everybody, Anthony here from Awesome Anthony Productions, and today I'm going to give you my review of what's probably going to be one of the last films in the DCEU before James Gunn takes over, The Flash. But before we get started, you know exactly what to do. Please leave a like, it really helps out the channel, subscribe, and ring the bell so that you never miss another review or short. Now let's get into it. Alright, so just like I did with the Little Mermaid remake, I'm going to have to address the elephant in the room here. Ezra Miller is insane and an absolute menace to society that should have been locked up by this point.
Look, if y'all want to die,
and always just knock you out, and then you won't have to panic.
if you want to fight, is that the deal?
However, I do understand that Ezra's the lead and co-lead of this $200 million blockbuster, and you can't just erase that. Nor can you erase or ignore the talent and dedication of everybody else in the crew. So I'm gonna do what I try to do with most entertainment starring celebrities that are absolute pieces of garbage, which is actually a lot coming out of Hollywood. I'm gonna separate the art from the artist. So putting aside that controversy and taking into account the years of development hell, all the reshoots, all the rewrites, and the entire shit show that the DCEU was for the last decade before the new one was announced, is this movie actually good? Well, it has good moments, but overall this movie is a f***ing mess. The Flash picks up in what I assume is present day, giving us a little bit of a Justice League reunion, as Barry shows up to help Ben Affleck's Batman stop a bank robbery and save a bunch of newborn babies from a collapsing hospital wing. Yeah, I gotta be honest though, this is a really fun intro sequence to this movie, and aside from one major complaint that I will get into later, I really enjoyed this opening scene, and I couldn't help but have a little bittersweet feeling when Batfleck said bye to Barry, because I know that's going to be the last time that we see that team together.
So long, partner.
Anyway, the other aspect of the beginning of this film is Ezra Miller's Barry Allen and his quest to exonerate his dad, who was accused of murdering his mom when Barry was just a kid. But when Barry goes for an emotional run and remembers that he can run back in time, he decides to go back in time and change something so that his mother will survive. But on the way back, he ends up knocked out of the Speed Force by a mysterious figure and ends up in an alternate version of 2013, one where his parents are alive and happily married, and he's an idiot surfer dude college kid.
Something very familiar about all this. Very familiar about all this.
Idiot surfer dude college kid with no powers. And while trying to figure out what the hell is going on and how he ended up in an alternate dimension, Barry realizes that since it's 2013, General Zod is about to attack, to claim Earth and terraform it and turn it into Krypton. So Barry realizes that he has to put together the Justice League. Only instead of the usual faces, he ends up finding Michael Keaton's Batman, who helps him free Sasha Calle's Supergirl so that they can fight Zod and save the world.
Batman, what do we do?
We try not to die.
Wow, that was a lot. Alright, let's get started with what works here, because regardless of what you might have heard, it's actually a surprising amount. As I mentioned, I really enjoyed the beginning action sequence. It's a fast-paced, fun set piece that allows Barry a chance to show off some more speed powers and gives him and Batfleck a chance to play off of each other a little bit, while giving that character a nice send-off since we're never going to see him again, unfortunately. From there, I was actually surprised by the number of jokes and quips that made me laugh or chuckle, especially one relating to an alternate universe version of Back to the Future. I also thought that as soon as the two Barrys end up at Wayne Manor and meet Michael Keaton's Bruce Wayne, the movie really comes alive. Keaton slips right back into this role, and though the movie doesn't quite know what to do with him, it's pretty hard not to get excited and nostalgic, especially when you see the perfectly recreated manor, the Batcave, the Batmobile, the Batwing, along with the original Danny Elfman theme woven into the score.
I'm Batman.
And with modern stunt work and special effects, anytime he drops into a fight is just jaw-droppingly badass and goes way farther than they could ever do in the late 80s and early 90s. But anyway, after Batman's introduced and the exposition and plot are out of the way, this movie turns fun, exciting, and flies by at a pretty quick pace. That was working for the most part, charging with determination from scene to set piece to scene.
Not terrible.
I also thought that there were several scenes where the two Barrys actually played kind of well off each other, even though for the most part that was a pretty annoying thing for me in the movie.
This is mad trippy. Dude, this is catastrophic.
Overall, there's a really strong sense of comic book fun to this film, but this, literally all of this, is overshadowed by the biggest complaint I have about this movie. It is ugly. Yeah, this has some of the worst CGI I've seen in a modern blockbuster in years. Remember that scene I mentioned earlier about the Flash saving babies? The babies in that scene are some absolute nightmare fuel.
What is that? What the f*** is that?
Like some shit right out of the Polar Express. Dead eyes and all. So yeah, the CGI is horrible. Though with all the controversy around this movie, the delays, the reshoots, the rewrites, I'm not surprised. They were working and changing this thing right up until the last possible second. So this is probably just the result of all these animators and effects artists having less time than your average Marvel effects team, and it really shows. Some of the worst is in any scene involving the two Barrys, as it was painfully obvious that instead of just filming the scene multiple times with Ezra Miller playing both parts, they just used a body double for most of it and deep-faked Miller's face onto the body double, and it is so noticeable. Very distracting. Actually, all of the CGI is incredibly distracting, and it brings down the movie's most fun and exciting scenes.
Do you mind?
Boy, he really sucks.
sucks the fun out of everything, doesn't he?
Especially when Barry is time traveling and we see into the Speed Force and the Chromodome. That shit looks like a PlayStation 2 game. The only one with moderately decent CGI is Batman, but that was their main grab to pull people into this movie, so that's not that big of a surprise either. Speaking of Batman, that leads me to my next complaint.
Don't go there.
I love Michael Keaton's Batman. It was really great seeing him again, and he has a chance to do some really awesome stuff, but it really feels like they didn't really know what to do with him in terms of the plot, besides just having him there for nostalgia points. He's cool and badass as ever, but all he really does is fight, throw in some exposition about the multiverse, and spout lines from his old movies.
You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts.
And when we have this 70-year-old crime fighter in broad daylight in the desert fighting a bunch of Kryptonians, it kind of looks goofy. There's also no real arc or emotional moments from him, really, and overall, I was just left disappointed by his presence here. Actually, that's the case with pretty much every character that's not named Barry Allen. Sasha Calle's Supergirl, though she does a great job in that role, she's nothing more than a MacGuffin to drive the plot along. And the returning players from Man of Steel, Michael Shannon's Zod and Ajay Trao's Fiora, have had any real sense of characterization just stripped from them completely, and they're literally just there for exposition, yelling a couple of lines, and being replaced by CGI for a fight scene. Actually, I don't even think Fiora gets any lines. And though the original Barry Allen definitely gets the strongest character arc in the movie, and has plenty of times where he has to take charge and be a little bit more mature because of his completely idiotic alternate self, I'm just really not a big fan of Ezra Miller's performance. And when we get two Ezra Millers on screen, the other one is even worse.
This is getting out of hand. Now there are two of them.
With his surfer dude laugh and accent. And outside of a few parts that I mentioned earlier that work well between the two, he never really goes past being annoying outside of like the end of Act 3. I also have very mixed feelings about an extended sequence in the climax that, though it got me a little hyped at first and I smiled a bit, thinking about how it was done just makes me feel weird.
No, don't like that.
And I'm sorry I can't say more about it, but if you saw the movie, you know what I'm talking about. There is some ethical issues in there with that whole thing. Plus the fact that the CGI in that scene is laughably awful. Lastly, for complaints, some of the editing here is all over the place. There is one scene where it looks like Supergirl is going to go do something very important, but she randomly takes a break to go all the way back to Wayne Manor to hang out with the Flashes, and then they all go back to that place, and it just was very jarring and weird, and that's just one example of the weird editing in this movie. So between Scorpion King level CGI throughout, a not so likable lead with two grating performances, weird editing choices, and a lack of real characterization for anyone outside of the main character, this could have been one of the worst DC movies ever released. Were it not for that awesome opening sequence, the fun second act with Batman and Supergirl, and an awesome, yet kinda ugly third act action set piece that leads into a surprisingly emotional climax, and a strong enough, albeit kinda sloppy ending that, though it ties a nice bow on Barry's character arc for the movie, just left me even more confused about the DCEU's future than I was before. So as it stands, it's far from the worst in the DCEU, but it's messy enough and plagued with enough of their typical problems and terrible CGI that it's far from the best too. Ezra Miller, though, is a criminal with an absolute weird take on this character, and I would be 100% fine if we had a different actor playing the Flash going forward. And that's my review of The Flash. Thank you for watching, everybody. I've been Anthony from Awesome Anthony Productions, and if you like this review, you know exactly what to do. Please leave a like to help out the channel, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss any of my new content. While you're at it, you can find the links to my socials in the description below. Leave a comment with your thoughts, or just click or tap on these cards here. It'll take you to my review of Transformers Rise of the Beast, or just over to my channel where you can check out my reviews, my shorts, and my old shit. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I will see you next time for my review of Elemental.